everyone, this is Brony Simpson here, and today I'm going to show you my Super Nintendo collection. These are all my Super Nintendo games, and I'm going to start off with this shelf right here. Brett Hull Hockey 95. An okay game, but very challenging. Scooby-Doo Mystery. Bill Lambier's Combat Basketball. Natsume Championship Wrestling. Boxing Legends of the Ring, which is a pretty good game, but pretty challenging. Natsume Championship Wrestling is also a good game, although the grappling takes some getting used to. Next up, I have The Adventures of Dr. Franken. And here's Aladdin. This is one of my all-time favorites. And it's also one of my favorite movies of all time. I still remember having fond memories of seeing that movie when I was really little. And then Maui Mallard in Cold Shadow. A flawed game, but a cult classic. A lot of people actually love this game. Even I love it. And then here's Terminator 2, the arcade game. It's a good game, but if you play it with a Super Nintendo mouse, then it's a lot more fun. SimCity, good game. Super Punch-Out, which used to be one of my all-time favorites. This is an awesome game. Next up, we've got Kirby Superstar. This is an awesome game. One of my all-time favorites. I still remember having fond memories of playing it back when I was a little kid in the 90s. And then on this side is mostly the Super Nintendo games made by Nintendo themselves. But first, I'm going to show you these two games. The Great Circus Mystery starring Mickey and Minnie, and The Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse. Both very good games. Both very similar and very challenging. Here's Super Mario Kart. This is the childhood cartridge. And then here's a couple more childhood cartridges to show. Super Mario World, which I used to love very much when I was a kid. And like with most other people who were kids in the 90s, this was one of the very first games I ever played for the Super Nintendo. And one of the first games I ever owned. And the same goes with Mario Paint right here. Both of these cartridges are from my childhood. Tetris Attack, one of the best games of all time. This brings back a lot of great memories of 2007 and 2008. For me, those were great years for reliving the 90s. then here's Super Mario All-Stars right here. And this is the childhood cartridge. Yeah, I've had this since I was a kid. And then here's Super Metroid, one of my favorite games. Unfortunately, I wasn't aware of this game very much when I was a kid, but I eventually heard about it and I eventually played it and I loved it. Alright, next we've got Yoshi's Island. This brings back a lot of great memories of playing this game in the late 90s. And then here's The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, also a game that I had some great childhood memories with. You know, Yoshi's Island is one of the games that really takes me back to when I was a kindergartner during the mid-90s. F-Zero. The Ren and Stimpy Show, Vidiot. Some people consider this game terrible, but I actually loved it. I thought this game was awesome. And here's Final Fight. Not the best version, but a well-known version. Often considered by some people to be worth playing. Here's Super Castlevania 4, one of my all-time favorites. This really brings back memories of 2007. This was one of my all-time favorites. And I just loved this game because I loved Castlevania. And here's Star Fox, a game that I consider to be flawed, but it's still a good game. True Lies, this is also a good game, but the only thing I find flawed about it is that you can't move and shoot at the same time. Next up, we got Wolfchild. This is one of my favorites. This is a very good game. And then next up, we have The Wizard of Oz. Best of the Best Championship Karate. More like worst of the worst, because this is one of the worst games ever. I absolutely despise this game. Here's Vortex, one of my least favorite Super Nintendo games. And then here's Tetris and Dr. Mario, also one of the best Super Nintendo games of all time. Kendo Rage. Kendo Rage really takes me back to 2008. Then here's Barbie Supermodel, which I actually like. This is a pretty fun game. I know some people consider this game terrible, but I think it's a good game. You know, especially for a Barbie game. I mean, it's one of my favorite games. Then here's Batman Forever, a game that sucked back then, and it sucks forever. This is indeed a horrible game. It should have been made better. I loved the movie, though. The movie was one of my favorites, and I used to watch it all the time. I loved that Jim Carrey played the Riddler. And then here's no. This is Super Baseball Simulator 1000. I almost said Tecmo Super Baseball, but no, this is Super Baseball Simulator 1000. It's a good game, but very, very challenging. Hole-in-one golf. And then here's Cool World. This used to be one of my all-time favorites. I loved Cool World very much. And it's also one of my favorite movies of all time. And then here, Super Battle Tanks War in the Gulf. And then here's ActRaiser. Then here are some basketball games right here. NCAA Final Four Basketball, or NCAA, however you pronounce it, it's there. I prefer pronouncing it NCAA. Then here's NBA Showdown, one of the early basketball games for the Super Nintendo by EA Sports. And then here's Madden 96. And then down here are all the fighting games that I have for the Super Nintendo. I know there's more fighting games than this in the Super Nintendo library, but these are all the ones that I have right now for the time being. I'll eventually have more. So anyway, here's Ranma 1/2 Hard Battle. One of the rarest and most obscure Super Nintendo fighting games of all time. Art of Fighting. This is a good game that really brings back memories of 2008. I used to love this game very much. Lee's theme and Mr. Big's themes were always my most favorite themes to be listening to in this game. And they still are. Street Fighter 2, aka Street Fighter 2 The World Warrior. I used to play this game all the time back in 2007, and it was one of my all-time favorites. I mean, I would pop in this game whenever I wanted to play the Super Nintendo, and I just suddenly loved Street Fighter more than ever. Street Fighter 2 Turbo. And then here's Super Street Fighter 2. And now this was definitely my all-time favorite back then. The only thing I find flawed about the game is that the only way to see the screen, the congratulations screen with all the characters, is to beat the game on hardest mode without losing a single round. Which is pretty unfair because they didn't do that with the original Street Fighter 2. But they did put in the thing where you had to beat the game without continuing just to see the congratulations screen without... Well, I mean, you had to see the congratulations screen with all the bosses. Yeah, sorry, my mind's being a bit of a slipper right now. Okay, here's Primal Rage. And then next up, here's one of my favorites. Brutal Paws of Fury. I love this game because I love how it captures a Kung Fu Panda feel, and the music is awesome as well. In fact, whenever I Clay or think of Brutal Paws of Fury, I'm always thinking of Kung Fu Panda and Yin Yang Yo, which is one of my favorite shows. Anyway, here's Power Moves, one of my least favorite fighting games for the Super Nintendo. And then down here we've got Justice League Task Force. I would consider this game a real classic, except that the special moves are very hard to pull off. And Aquaman's the only character you could ever really win very good with. I mean, you could win well with other characters, but trying to beat Aquaman is just a pain, unless you're playing as Aquaman. Anyway, here's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters. This is a very good game. I'll put these two games back here. And then here's Mortal Kombat, which I used to love playing back in the day. This brings back a lot of memories of 2007 as well as 2008. Even though the controls in this game aren't very responsive like the Genesis version, I still loved the game nonetheless. And then here's Mortal Kombat 2, which I see as a game that's mostly about pulling off fatalities and special moves. And then here's Fatal Fury. Rise of the Robots, a terrible game with awesome graphics. Oh, and the music is also good. The music fits the game perfectly. And then here's Fatal Fury 2. Fighter's History, which I think is an awesome game, especially for a Street Fighter ripoff. Heck, nowadays we've got plenty of Street Fighter ripoffs that are very good to play. Clay Fighter 2 Judgment Clay, one of my all-time favorites. I actually love this game. Some people might not consider it all that great, but others love it, and Clay Fighter 2 Judgment Clay is my favorite game. It is an awesome game. I love it more than Clay Fighter right here. I mean, this is a pretty good game, but I just happen to love the second Clay Fighter even more. Here's Killer Instinct, which brings back precious memories of 2007. I mean, back in 2007, I was reliving the 90s with so many games and stuff. And this was one of them. This was one of the games that I was having a great reliving of the 90s with. And then right here is Battle Blaze. Looks cool, but the game is terrible due to play control. Well, those are all the fighting games I have. And here, I've got Cliffhanger. Cool Spot. Beethoven. Which, it's really Beethoven's second. Why they didn't put the name Beethoven II on the cartridge instead of just Beethoven, I have no idea why. Anyway, here's The Simpsons, Bart's Nightmare, a game that I tend to like and dislike. I mean, the action is good, but the fact that this game is very hard is why Acclaim should have put in a password feature. If the game had had a password feature, then I would have considered the game to be a real cult classic. But anyway, here's Pinocchio. The Addams Family Pugsley Scavenger Hunt, a game that I thought was awesome. I used to love this game. I remember reading about it in Nintendo Power and reading that it was a very hardcore, challenging game, and I wanted so much to play the game, and I loved the game's hardcore challenge. Here's Addams Family Values, a decent Zelda-like game, but not completely perfect because the game doesn't have a save feature. I mean, it does have a password feature, but the only way to get a password is to look for Cousin It in rare places, which is a serious flaw. So Addams Family Values isn't the most perfect game. It's fairly decent, but not perfect. And then here's the Addams Family, which is one of the best games of all time. This is actually one of my all-time favorites. I loved this game very much. And then here are some games that really take me back to 2011 and 2012. Back in those years, I was a very big fan of wrestling. Here's WWF Royal Rumble. I played it and I loved it. Like, this was one of my all-time favorites. I mean, when I started playing it, I just couldn't get enough of it. And then here's WWF Raw, which is an awesome game. A little bit faster than Royal Rumble, plus it has more modes and a multiplayer mode. And here's WWF WrestleMania, the arcade game. I actually like this game. I thought this was an awesome game. It's very hard, but still pretty good. And then here I've got Monopoly. The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle and Friends. Now this is an extremely rare game. I mean, it's hard to find this game in stores. Or game stores, to be exact. But it's still a terrible game. But I hate the NES version even more. Anyway, here's Phantom 2040. This is a pretty good game. Animaniacs. NBA Live 97. Good game. Pretty much all the NBA Live games I've ever played on the Super Nintendo are awesome. I mean, they're all the same game, but still pretty awesome in my opinion. Sports Illustrated Championship Football and Baseball. NHL Stanley Cup. Paperboy 2. Family Dog, which is a terrible game. Short, terrible, and even the cartoon is terrible. It's interesting, though, that the dog looks a lot like Sparky from Frankenweenie. Inspector Gadget. Very good game. Really takes me back to 2008. Battleship. Jack Nicklaus Golf. Good game. Nickelodeon's Are Real Monsters. I used to love Are Real Monsters when I was a kid. I used to watch it on Nickelodeon a lot. It was one of my favorite shows. Anyway, here's Harley's Humongous Adventure. Then I've got Tetris 2. The Mask. This is a pretty hard game to find in stores. Or game stores. King of the Monsters. A game that I would consider a classic if pinning your opponent wasn't impossible. And here's Bust a Move. This is a pretty good game. Disney's Goof Troop, which used to be one of my all-time favorites when I was a kid. Now I consider it a least favorite because it doesn't capture a feel of the show. Here's Battletoads Double Dragon, one of the best games of all time. This game is awesome. This was one of my all-time favorites, and it still hails as an awesome game. And then here's Stunt Race FX. This really takes me back to 2007. I especially love the Aqua stage, because that just puts me in an area where it's like I'm being in a cool, refreshing world of swimming and stuff like that. I mean, it's a flawed game, but I give it praise for its music. And then here is The Lion King, one of the best games of all time. This is a really good game. And then here's Batman Returns. Awesome beat 'em up. Except Catwoman is such a nightmare in the game. She's the only boss I hate very much in the game. I can take all the other bosses, but Catwoman is a nightmare. Here's Bassin's Black Bass. Cutthroat Island. Jeopardy! This is a good game. Smart Ball. I believe that this is a very, very obscure game. Rival Turf. Good game, not entirely the best. The punching isn't as good as guys punching in Final Fight 1 and 3, but the jump kicking is perfectly awesome, and the music is still awesome. I love the music in the game. And then here's Super Bases Loaded 2, and then next is Super Tennis, and then here's one of my favorites from back then, Super Widget. This was one of my all-time favorites back in 2007 and 8. I loved this game very much. next shelf right here. Jurassic Park. I'd call this game a classic, but sadly the game has no save feature, and the fact that the game is really long is why the game should have been given a save feature. Because, having to try to beat the game in one sitting is a complete nightmare. And then here's Super NES Super Scope 6, which I have not been able to play at all because I do not have a Super Scope. But sometime in the future I will get one. Here's Bonkers. Now this is an awesome game. Like, this was one of my all-time favorites back in 2008. I mean, I bought this game and I just loved it very much. I played it so much. So many precious memories I've had with that game. Wayne's World. I thought this game was pretty awesome. I find it hard to believe a lot of people hate this game, because I really loved this game. I played it a lot. I loved it. And then here's We're Back, A Dinosaur's Story. It's an okay game, not the best, but it's okay. And I actually love this game because it really takes me back to 2007 and 8. Another game that brings back precious memories of 2007 is Zool, Ninja of the Nth Dimension. This is a pretty awesome game, although I did think at the time that the game sucked because of the very fast play control. But I'm used to it now. James Bond Jr. Yeah, and to be exact, Zool was a game I loved and hated at the same time. But anyway, here's one of the best movie-based games for the Super Nintendo, Alien 3. This is an awesome game. Foreman for Real. This is a pretty good game. Similar to Boxing Legends of the Ring, but smoother graphics, smoother action, and better play control, in my opinion. I used to play that game a lot when I was a kid. I thought it was awesome. Here's Super Buddy, which is one of the worst games I've ever played. I absolutely hate this game. And then here I've got Gradius 3. A good game, but very, very challenging and very, very long. The Page Master. I remember seeing the movie as a kid, and when I saw the trailer for the video game on the VHS, I wanted more than anything to get my hands on the game. Then here's Tecmo Super Baseball. Claymates, a pretty fun game. Ken Griffey Jr. presents Major League Baseball. Great game, but very hard. And then next up is Pilot Wings. One of my least favorite Super Nintendo games of all time. Then here's Lesser the Unlikely, which I thought was an awesome game, and I still think it's awesome. I actually liked the play control in this game. I loved how similar it was to Flashback. Because back then I loved a good challenge factor. I mean, the game really takes me back to 2007. The only two levels in the game that truly suck, though, are the jungle level where you gotta swing from those vines, and then the tiger chase level. That part of the game was very difficult. Anyway, here's No Escape. Chester Cheetah, Too Cool to Fool. And I remember playing that game one time when I was really little. Super Bases Loaded. Extra Innings. Pro Quarterback. Ms. Pac-Man. This is an awesome game. You know, both this, the Genesis and NES versions, are awesome. NBA Jam. This is a real classic here. A lot of people who grew up in the 90s loved that game. And then right here is Doom, which is an awesome first-person shooter. Although the Super Nintendo version is terrible. And then here's Liberty or Death. This is a pretty rare game. Math Blaster Episode 1. Now this game is very hard to find. I mean, I remember seeing this in Nintendo Power and having a feeling it was a game that never got released. But I found this game one day at a game store, and I bought the game while I had the chance. Anyway, here's Jim Power, The Lost Dimension in 3D. The action is pretty good, but the levels are extremely long, and it's really not considered the best game. Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest, one of my all-time favorites. This takes me all the way back to the late 90s. I had the best memories of playing that game back in the day. Although I did play that and Yoshi's Island in the mid-90s when I was a kindergartner. But my memories with Donkey Kong Country 2 at the time weren't the best. But in the late 90s, man, I was having a life with that game. Here's Donkey Kong Country 3, Dixie Kong's Double Trouble. X-Men Mutant Apocalypse. The game has awesome action and play control, but the fact that when you die, you start back at the player select screen instead of dying right where you... I mean, instead of starting back where you died is why the game is horrible, in my opinion. The game is just impossible for me. So yeah, even though the game has awesome action and awesome graphics and music and awesome play control, it's still one that I consider the worst due to that one flaw where you go back to the player select screen when you die. And anyway, here's Barkley, Shut Up and Jam. This is a good game. This game is a bit easier than NBA Jam because it's so much easier to push your opponent and steal the ball. Although the kind of the world that the game takes place in really isn't my cup of tea. Whereas NBA Jam takes place in a kind of a world that I find much better. You know, just the whole basketball stadium, you know. Anyway, here's NCAA football and RoboCop 3. The Lord of the Rings Volume 1. I love the artwork on this cartridge. The music is good, but the game itself tries to be a Zelda-like game with RPG elements, but it's just not a good game. The game just isn't worth playing. I mean, if Square were to have made the game instead of Interplay, then I'm sure it would have been an awesome Final Fantasy clone. And then maybe I would have considered the game precious. Anyway, here's Demolition Man. Super Play Action Football. Not a very good game, but the music at the title screen is awesome. I love the title screen music. And then here's Street Combat, the infamous fighting game that was originally Ranma 1/2 on the Super Famicom. And when it came to America, it was borderized into the unfortunate Street Combat. Here's Pack Attack. Jeopardy Sports Edition, and they fight and fight and fight and fight and fight. Fight. The Itchy and Scratchy game. This is one of my favorite games of all time. I loved the Itchy and Scratchy game. Then we got 3 more games on the shelf. The Lawnmower Man, a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up platformer that should have been made better. Spectre. The Jungle Book. And the box to the game actually has the characters on the artwork instead of leaves and stuff. Anyway, that's it for this side of the for this part of the shelf. And then here's some more. Here's Capcom's Soccer Shootout. The game's graphics, music, and action are awesome, but I swear the game is very, very challenging. But if you love a hardcore challenge factor to try to outsmart in a soccer game, then this is the one for you. Here's Frantic Flea, which is a horrible game because you have to get every single flea taken to the exit when they should have made it so that you could just bring a few fleas at a time, or at least bring one flea at a time, you know, instead of trying to get all the fleas. Anyway, here's NBA All-Star Challenge, one of the worst basketball games of all time. And then we've got Super High Impact. Next up is Road Riot, one of the worst racing games of all time. NBA Live 98. Lufia and the Fortress of Doom. This is a pretty rare game. And it's a very good one. Yes, I have Lufia and the Fortress of Doom. Very good RPG. And then next I've got An American Tail, 5 Goes West. Now this game is an extremely rare game. And then here's Izzy's quest for the Olympic rings. RoboCop versus the Terminator. Wanderers from East 3. This is an awesome game. This brings back so many memories of 2007. I played this and I loved it very much. And I actually admired how challenging it was at first. Because back then I loved a good challenge. Here's Troy Aikman Football. The Blues Brothers, a game that I actually find pretty good. Although not entirely perfect, it's a pretty good game. Mr. Nuts, this is a very good game. And this is a game that only ever came out as a rental at the time of its release. Revolution X, Music is the Weapon, featuring Aerosmith. I actually thought this game was awesome. I can't believe that there are some people out there who actually consider that game to be the worst. Anyway, here's Warp Speed. Hyperzone. College Slam. Dennis the Menace. NCAA basketball. And then here I've got Bugs Bunny Rabbit Rampage. Spider-Man. And this is the one that's based off the 90s cartoon. PTO, Pacific Theater of Operation. Or Operations. Yeah. Push Over. This is a pretty obscure game, but it's fun. Challenging but fun. Arrow the Acrobat. I find that game to be too flawed because of the dive drill attack. It should have been given a much longer range. Anyway, Mario is missing. Yeah, the drilling dive attack in Arrow the Acrobat, if the range was much longer, then it wouldn't feel so difficult and flawed. But anyway, here's Shanghai 2, Dragon's Eye. Good tile matching game. One of the best. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which I remember getting at a game store on New Year's Day, 2007. And I just loved the game very much. I mean, I played it all the time, almost every single time that I went to play my Super Nintendo. I would pop in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and just keep playing it and playing it and playing it. And then here's Champions World Class Soccer. Kakama Night in Busyland. I remember trying to find this game on Amazon and on YouTube, but I couldn't find anything of the game. I thought at first that maybe the game was never released, but then I finally found the game, and I didn't even expect it when I found it, and when I had the chance, I bought the game. Porky Pig's Haunted Holiday. This is a good game. It's great to have a Looney Tunes video game where you play as Porky Pig, because I always loved Porky Pig when I was a kid. He and Daffy Duck were my favorite Looney Tunes back when I was really little. NHLPA Hockey 93. This is a terrible game. The Genesis version is a lot better. Super Empire Strikes Back. Good game, but man, it is hardcore challenging. Good thing for the password feature. Tecmo Super Bowl. The Untouchables. Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. Home Alone. Dragon's Lair. NBA Hang Time. The game is exactly like NBA Jam, but with in-game music. And then here's Dino City. NBA Live 95. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. This is a rare game here. And then here's Eek the Cat. Now this is a pretty good game. It's challenging, but it's good. This is one of my favorites. And just like with Mr. Nuts, this game was only released as a rental. Then here's Beavis and Butthead. Very good game. I used to play this back in 2007, and it really takes me back. It brings back the memories I had with it. Pink Goes to Hollywood, one of the worst games ever. The play control is very slippery, which is why I don't like the game. Here's NFL Quarterback Club. Tecmo Super NBA Basketball. Good game. Toy Story. Now, I love the music in this game, but the hit detection is horrible. The Genesis version, on the other hand, is better. Roger Clemens MVP Baseball. Spider-Man X-Men Arcade's Revenge. Here at the top, arcade was misspelled. It says Acgrade. Alien vs. Predator. The music in the game is good, but the punching isn't as good as Final Fight, so yeah, I consider the game flawed. Krusty's Super Fun House. Illusion of Gaia, one of the best Zelda-like games of all time. This is one of my all-time favorites. I love this game. It is awesome. Bram Stoker's Dracula. Lagoon. This is a really good game. To me, the game is the game's action crosses between the Ys series and the Zelda series. But anyway, here's Hook. Bebe's Kids, one of the rarest Super Nintendo games of all time, and one of the worst. Although I did love the game at one time, but looking at it now, it brings back horrible memories of a certain part of my past that I am not going to talk about. And I take a serious despising towards the game. I have it anyway because, gotta collect the games, even the rare ones. Even games that suck gotta be in the collection. Anyway, here's Wing Commander. NFL football. Super Slam Dunk. The Incredible Crash Dummies. Championship Pool. This is a good game. And those are all the games that I have on the shelf. Now I'm going to show you all my boxed Super Nintendo games. So here's Riddick Bowe Boxing. As you can see, the box is in perfect condition. Let's take a look at the cartridge as well. There, the cartridge is in very awesome condition. And then here's the manual to the game. It looks like it's a little bit worn. And then here's a poster that came with the game. Yeah. And then here's Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego. Here's the cartridge. Baseball 2000. Here's the instruction booklet. Very good condition. Then here's the cartridge. The cartridge is in very good condition as well. And then I've also got True Golf Classics, Wiley Country Club. Have no idea what this word is pronounced. I'll get to finding out what it's pronounced eventually, but for now, I'm just gonna show my games. Come on. Alright. Here we go. Here's the cartridge. Very good condition. Then here's another golf game that I have for the Super Nintendo. PGA Tour Golf. PGA Tour 96. And then here's the cartridge. And then I've got some other boxed games. So I'm gonna. Here's Shaq Fu, the game that is considered both the best and the worst. And here's the cartridge. The cartridge is in awesome condition. Here's the instruction booklet, still in good condition. And then I've got Cyberspin. Come on. Come on, get out of there. Here it is, Cyberspin. And then here's Roadrunner's Death Valley Rally. Here's the game to it. And then here's Toys, which is a rare game. And here's the cartridge. Here's the booklet. And then here's Beauty and the Beast. This is a very rare game. And it's a pretty good one. Here's the cartridge. In very awesome condition, and I love the artwork on the cartridge. It is awesome. And now I'm going to show you all a very rare RPG for the Super Nintendo. One of the best and most overshadowed games. Super Ninja Boy. That's right, I have the game and its box. Come on. It's hard to get it open with one hand. Here's the instruction booklet. It's pretty worn. And then here's the cartridge. It is in awesome condition. Yep. This is one of my all-time favorites. This is one of the best RPGs of all time for the Super Nintendo. And I'm glad that I have it in my collection. Now, before I end the video, here's a little bonus. Yes, that's right. I'm holding in my hand a reproduction cartridge of a Super Famicom game, Dragon Quest VI. One of the best Super Famicom RPGs. And this one is the English translation cartridge that I have. Anyway, that's it. I hope you all enjoyed this. If you did enjoy this, then give it a like. Don't forget to comment below the video, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe, and don't forget to click the notification bell as well. Well, that's all for this video. I'll see you all again soon. Bye.